I've skimmed the book, which goes on sale, I believe, today or tomorrow via Amazon. What is the connection between cyber warfare and the supply chain bottlenecks we're having right now? I'll stipulate that this is more than just COVID. It is more than trade spats. It is more than a lot of things. But what's the connection to cyber?
Thank you for having me again on the show, Kelly and Tyler. The big problem is that we've been looking at things like Colonial Pipeline, where the Russians essentially come in and say, give me so much money through the cyber criminals they allow to prepare. A supply chain is like any chain with many, many links. What I predict is going to happen, is already happening, is that these cyber criminals are not just going to be going after the really big companies, which are in many ways well protected, but they're going to go against the little companies that supply the big companies. And so the shortages that you've reported on often on your show are going to get worse because somebody sitting in India or another country over there can essentially pick off a small supplier and say, look, pay me $10,000 or I'm not going to allow you to continue to go forward. That, I think, is going to be the big story coming along. Component manufacturers, the little guys that feed the big guys and make the big products possible. Item number 2 is 3D manufacturing is totally upending, you say, where and how components are made because cheap and reliable Asian-based manufacturing no longer exists. Are those 3D manufacturing capabilities widespread enough, at scale, sufficient scale, really to be disruptive? In the long run, this sounds like a good thing. Well, it's going to be good for the United States because a lot of the 3D manufacturing that you're talking about will be going on here, rather than a supplier in China where you have to have 10,000 or 20,000 parts made, and if they back up, you have a real problem. In the case of the 3D printing, you can go and have several dozen parts made. Now, they'll be more expensive in the short run, but what I think you need to look at in the future is there are now server farms being set up around the country. So you just don't have one 3D printer sitting in the corner waiting to make something, but they have many of these. And so it's becoming economically better, Tyler, to have these things made when you need them and not 12,000 miles away, but sort of up the street.
What's the implication for China, Dennis?
I think China's going to be the big loser. China now exports, I think, between $2.4 and $2.6 trillion worth of things essentially over to the United States. That is really going to drop off. I predict that the elephant in the room is China. China production is no longer cheap. And with the Chinese government becoming increasingly aggressive about clamping down not just on Chinese companies, but American and European companies doing business there, that I think that the Chinese government's omniscient pressure on these companies is going to make you say, do I really want to make my products over there in China? No, I think I'm going to make them somewhere else. So they'll be cutting off their nose to spite their face, in effect. Well, what will happen in China, Tyler, is they've already done this. The Chinese are saying to Chinese people, buy more Chinese-made goods. Don't bring them in from overseas. I think the Chinese already see this coming. But I predict that by about a third, the number of products made in China that are now exported to the West are probably going to drop. And to China, if they want to keep those companies busy, are going to have to buy it themselves. I've wondered on numerous occasions. Tell me I'm all wet here, Dennis, which you're very good at, by the way, because we're old friends. We've known each other a long time. But I've wondered at times whether China is, the sweet way of putting it, messing with us. I don't think China is our friend. I think China is more than an economic competitor. When you see over the last week and a half, they've sent a lot of sorties going over near Taiwan. I think that China is not just messing with us, but China would like to replace the U.S. as the dominant economic force in the world. And it's really up to the United States to decide, yes, I'm going to let that happen, or no, I don't. And I think dealing with the supply chain by making more things here in the U.S. that are supplying U.S. and manufacturers in the Western Hemisphere is the strongest way to support economic growth in the U.S. But a lot of people would say that ball game has already been played and China has won. You don't agree? No. China has won because in the past, sorry, my friend, I'll disagree with you, because manufacturing in China was cheap and reliable. Making things in China is no longer cheap. The elephant in the room says, if you're making one product and you're supplying it solely from China, that's a mistake. You can get it done less expensively in Southeast Asia, but certainly more securely made if it's made, you know, in USMCA, in Canada, Mexico, or the United States.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.